Before the world wakes up, who are you? Not the version shaped by emails, demands, expectations and noise, not the self that reacts, performs or negotiates its worth through urgency, but the one that exists before all of that arrives. There is an hour most men sleep through, an hour untouched by opinion, untouched by comparison, untouched by interruption. In this hour, the world has not yet asked anything of you. And for a brief moment, you are not required to answer. The Stoics understood the power of this threshold. They knew that the mind, like a city, is easiest to govern before the gates are opened, before merchants arrive, before conflicts emerge, before the noise begins to argue for your attention. Modern neuroscience now echoes this ancient intuition. In the early hours, the brain is quieter, more receptive, less fragmented. Dopamine has not yet been scattered by stimulation. Attention has not yet been pulled in 10 directions. The nervous system is closer to baseline, closer to coherence. This is not a time for productivity. It is a time for authorship. Most lives are written reactively. The day begins and the self follows. Messages arrive and the mind answers. Pressure appears and identity adapts. But before the world wakes up, the order can be reversed. In silence, the mind reveals what it carries when nothing distracts it. Unresolved tension, unspoken intention. A quiet awareness that has been waiting beneath the surface. This is why the hour feels different. Not because it is empty, but because it is honest. The Stoics did not seek silence as escape. They sought it as confrontation, a chance to meet themselves without distortion, without applause, without resistance. In this stillness, something fundamental becomes possible. The self speaks before the world interrupts, and once you have heard that voice, the day unfolds differently. What if the first voice you heard each day was your own, the hour that belongs to no one else? Time is the one possession every human being spends, yet almost no one guards. Seneca warned that life is not short, only poorly used, not because hours vanish, but because they are surrendered without resistance. Most men wake already indebted to the world, owing replies, attention, obedience. The day claims them before they have claimed themselves. The early hour resists this theft. Before the world wakes up, time belongs to no one else. No institution demands it. No algorithm feeds on it. No expectation has yet learned your name. For the Stoics, time was not neutral. It was moral material. What you did with the first moments of the day revealed who commanded your life. Musonius Rufus insisted that philosophy must be practiced daily, not admired occasionally. Discipline was not an accessory to virtue, it was its foundation. To rise before the world is not an act of productivity, it is an act of sovereignty. Modern neuroscience gives this ancient discipline a biological frame. In the early hours, circadian rhythms favor clarity and focus. Cortisol rises naturally, sharpening alertness without agitation. The prefrontal cortex is less burdened by accumulated stimulation. Andrew Huberman describes this window as a period of heightened cognitive leverage, when attention is easier to direct and habits are easier to shape. But the deeper effect is not neurological alone. It is existential. When you wake before obligation, you experience time differently. It no longer feels scarce, it feels spacious. This alters the nervous system's relationship with urgency. The day stops chasing you. You begin to meet it from ahead. Most fear is born from the sensation of being late to one's own life. Always reacting, always catching up, always behind the moment that demands clarity. The Stoic hour reverses this condition. In claiming this hour, you are not adding hours to your life. You are reclaiming authorship over it. You decide what enters your mind before the world floods it with noise. You set orientation before distraction fragments attention. This is why waking early feels difficult at first. Not because the body resists effort, but because the ego resists silence. The world offers stimulation, as anesthesia. Silence offers responsibility. Yet with repetition, the body adapts. The nervous system learns that stillness is safe. The mind learns that clarity precedes demand. You begin to sense something subtle but decisive. This hour is not empty time. It is unclaimed territory, and territory once claimed reshapes identity. But time alone does not create clarity. Silence must be met without escape, and that is where the real work begins. Why stillness feels uncomfortable to the untrained. Mind. Silence unsettles most people not because it is empty, but because it is revealing. When external noise fades, the internal signal grows louder. Thoughts that were previously masked by stimulation begin to surface. Unresolved tension, unnamed emotion, vague anxiety. What was held together by distraction loosens its grip. The Stoics understood this reaction with precision. They taught that the mind is constantly receiving impressions. Images, thoughts, sensations arrive uninvited. The untrained person assumes these impressions are truth. The trained person pauses, examines, and decides whether to grant them authority. Silence removes the buffer between impression and awareness. This is why stillness often feels uncomfortable. The modern mind has been conditioned to equate stimulation with safety. Dopamine rewards novelty, movement, and anticipation. Notifications, scrolling, sound, and urgency all keep dopamine circuits active. When stimulation stops, dopamine drops. The brain interprets this as loss. Restlessness emerges. The body searches for something to grasp. What feels like boredom is often withdrawal. Daniel Goleman's work on attention reveals that the capacity to sit with this discomfort is a form of emotional intelligence. The ability to remain present without distraction strengthens self-regulation. It teaches the nervous system that stillness is not danger, that nothing must be fixed immediately, that awareness itself is sufficient. The Stoics practiced this long before neuroscience could explain it. They did not flee silence. They entered it deliberately. They used it as a diagnostic space, a place where the mind could observe itself without interference. Epictetus taught that disturbance does not come from what happens, but from the meaning assigned to it. Silence exposes this mechanism. Without noise, the mind reveals how quickly it interprets sensation as threat, uncertainty as urgency, and discomfort as something to escape. This is why many avoid the early hour, not because they are tired, but because they are unprepared to meet themselves. In silence, excuses dissolve. Performance falls away. There is no audience to impress, no comparison to hide behind. What remains is the raw state of the inner world. Yet this exposure is not punishment, it is opportunity. Neuroscience shows that when the brain is not flooded with input, default mode networks activate, reflection deepens, patterns become visible. Emotional residue from previous days surfaces for processing. Silence becomes a space for integration. The Stoics would recognize this immediately. They believed that clarity comes not from more information, but from better judgment. Silence sharpens judgment because it slows the mind enough to see its own movements. At first, this can feel destabilizing. The mind resists being seen. The nervous system seeks escape, but if one remains present, something shifts. Restlessness gives way to observation. Anxiety gives way to naming. Impulse gives way to choice. Silence stops being empty. It becomes a mirror. And once the mirror is no longer feared, it can be shaped intentionally. The mind can be prepared. The day can be framed before it begins. Because silence does not only reveal the inner world, it allows it to be arranged. Why stillness feels uncomfortable to the untrained mind. Silence unsettles most people not because it is empty, but because it is revealing. When external noise fades, the internal signal grows louder. Thoughts that were previously masked by stimulation begin to surface. unresolved tension, unnamed emotion, vague anxiety. What was held together by distraction loosens its grip. The Stoics understood this reaction with precision. They taught that the mind is constantly receiving impressions. Images, thoughts, sensations arrive uninvited. The untrained person assumes these impressions are truth. The trained person pauses, examines, and decides whether to grant them authority. Silence removes the buffer between impression and awareness. This is why stillness often feels uncomfortable. The modern mind has been conditioned to equate stimulation with safety. Dopamine rewards novelty, movement, and anticipation. Notifications, scrolling, sound, and urgency all keep dopamine circuits active. When stimulation stops, dopamine drops. The brain interprets this as loss. Restlessness emerges. The body searches for something to grasp. What feels like boredom is often withdrawal. Daniel Goleman's work on attention reveals that the capacity to sit with this discomfort is a form of emotional intelligence. The ability to remain present without distraction strengthens self-regulation. It teaches the nervous system that stillness is not danger, that nothing must be fixed immediately, that awareness itself is sufficient. The Stoics practiced this long before neuroscience could explain it. They did not flee silence. They entered it deliberately. They used it as a diagnostic space, a place where the mind could observe itself without interference. Epictetus taught that disturbance does not come from what happens, but from the meaning assigned to it. Silence exposes this mechanism. Without noise, the mind reveals how quickly it interprets sensation as threat, uncertainty as urgency, and discomfort as something to escape. This is why many avoid the early hour, not because they are tired, but because they are unprepared to meet themselves. In silence, excuses dissolve, performance falls away. There is no audience to impress, no comparison to hide behind. What remains is the raw state of the inner world. Yet this exposure is not punishment, it is opportunity. Neuroscience shows that when the brain is not flooded with input, default mode networks activate. Reflection deepens, patterns become visible, emotional residue from previous days surfaces for processing. Silence becomes a space for integration. The Stoics would recognize this immediately. They believed that clarity comes not from more information, but from better judgment. Silence sharpens judgment because it slows the mind enough to see its own movements. At first, this can feel destabilizing. The mind resists being seen. The nervous system seeks escape. But if one remains present, something shifts. Restlessness gives way to observation. Anxiety gives way to naming. Impulse gives way to choice. Silence stops being empty. It becomes a mirror. And once the mirror is no longer feared, it can be shaped intentionally. The mind can be prepared. The day can be framed before it begins. Because silence does not only reveal the inner world, it allows it to be arranged. Preparing the mind before life. Enters silence, reveals the inner world, but ritual gives it direction. Without structure, awareness drifts. Without intention, clarity fades as soon as the day begins to speak. The Stoics never entered the morning passively. They understood that the mind, left unattended, defaults to habit, and habit unexamined becomes fate. Marcus Aurelius did not write his meditations for history. He wrote them before the world touched him, not to feel better, but to remember who he intended to be. His reflections were not expressions of emotion, they were acts of mental alignment. Epictetus taught his students to rehearse difficulty before it arrived, not to invite pessimism, but to remove surprise. The Stoic morning ritual was a form of psychological inoculation. By imagining friction in advance, the nervous system learned not to panic when it appeared. Hierocles expanded this practice inward. He taught that attention should move in deliberate circles. from the self to close responsibility to wider concern. This was not abstraction. It was attentional training, a way of deciding in advance what deserved emotional investment. Modern neuroscience now describes this as cognitive priming. The brain does not respond to reality as it is, but as it has been prepared to interpret it. When the day begins without intention, the mind becomes reactive. When the day begins with framing, the mind becomes selective. Andrew Huberman explains that attention is a finite resource. What you focus on early determines what dominates later. The first inputs of the day shape neural momentum. Stress, urgency, and distraction amplify if introduced too soon. Calm, order, and perspective do the same. The Stoic ritual understood this intuitively. Before life enters, the mind must be oriented. This orientation was not elaborate, no performance, no excess. It was quiet and exact. What is within my control today? What is not? Where must I exercise patience? Where must I act with courage? What kind of person must I be, regardless of outcome? These questions were not affirmations, they were boundaries. By answering them in silence, the Stoic placed limits on chaos before chaos appeared. He did not wait for emotion to decide his behavior. He decided first. Neuroscientifically, this matters more than motivation. When intention precedes stimulus, the prefrontal cortex stays engaged under stress. The brain recognizes challenge as expected rather than threatening. Emotional spikes soften, recovery accelerates. This is why the day feels different when it is prepared for. Pressure still arrives, but it feels familiar. Conflict still emerges, but it feels navigable. The Stoic morning ritual does not guarantee a good day. It guarantees coherence. And coherence is what allows discipline to live beyond thought, because insight alone fades. But when the body learns calm before demand, discipline becomes embodied. Ritual prepares the mind, but the body must be trained to carry it. Training the nervous system. Before the first demand, ritual shapes intention, but intention alone does not govern the body. The nervous system does not obey philosophy. It obeys conditioning. This is where stillness becomes something far more serious than rest. It becomes training. Most men believe calm is something that happens when problems are solved. The Stoics understood the opposite. Calm must be rehearsed before problems arrive, or it will be unavailable when they do. Before the first demand of the day, the body is impressionable. Not weak, but open. Patterns have not yet been reinforced by reaction. The nervous system is closer to its natural baseline. Modern neuroscience confirms this window with precision. In the early hours, the brain is more plastic. Stress hormones have not yet been repeatedly triggered. Breathing patterns are slower, muscle tone is lower, the system is teachable. Joe Dispenza describes this as coherence between mind and body. When thought, breath, and posture align, the nervous system learns safety without sedation, calm without collapse, presence without tension. The Stoics practiced this without scientific vocabulary. Voluntary discomfort was one of their most misunderstood tools. Cold, hunger, restraint, silence. These were not punishments. They were controlled exposures. By entering discomfort deliberately, the body learned a crucial distinction. Discomfort is not danger. Sensation is not catastrophe. Pressure does not require panic. This training reshaped the nervous system from within. Stillness played a central role, not as absence of movement, but as absence of inner scrambling. To sit upright, to breathe slowly, to allow sensation without reflex. Neuroscientifically, this keeps the prefrontal cortex online while stress signals rise. The amygdala may alert, but it does not seize control. The body experiences intensity without fragmentation. This is neural command. Most fear is not cognitive, it is somatic. The body decides before the mind explains. That is why discipline must enter the body before the world enters the mind. When stillness is practiced daily, the nervous system rewires its expectations. It learns that silence is safe, that presence is stable, that urgency is not mandatory. Over time, something subtle but decisive occurs. The body stops anticipating threat. Recovery becomes faster. Emotional spikes shorten. The mind regains range. The Stoics would recognize this immediately. They believed freedom was not freedom from hardship, but freedom from being internally overthrown by it. This is why the early hour matters so deeply. Before the first email, before the first demand, before the first negotiation, the body is taught how to stand. Calm is no longer a reaction, it is a posture. And when calm becomes posture, the mind follows. The day may arrive loudly, but it arrives to a nervous system already trained. Stillness was not rest, it was rehearsal. And what is rehearsed in silence becomes unshakable in motion. Why the day obeys the one who rose in silence. When the world finally wakes, it does so without mercy. Messages arrive, voices multiply, demands stack upon one another, urgency pretends to be necessity. Most men meet this moment already behind. Their nervous system is reactive, their attention fragmented, their identity negotiated in real time with whatever appears first. But the man who rose in silence enters the day differently, not faster, not louder, earlier. The Stoics understood this advantage intuitively. Cato the Younger did not rush history. He met it already aligned. His strength was not in prediction, but in preparedness. He did not wait to see what the day would demand of him. He decided in advance who he would be. This is what it means to walk ahead of the crowd, not physically, but psychologically. Modern psychology frames this as psychological distance, the ability to observe pressure without being absorbed by it. Jordan Peterson often speaks of responsibility as something that orders chaos, but responsibility cannot be improvised under stress. It must already be embodied. The early silence creates this embodiment. When the self has already been met, nothing external needs to define it. Fear loses its leverage because identity is not being negotiated moment by moment. The man who rose in silence does not ask the day who he is. He brings that answer with him. Neuroscience reveals why this matters so profoundly. The brain responds differently to stress when it has already entered a state of coherence. Attention does not collapse inward. Emotion does not spike uncontrollably. The prefrontal cortex maintains oversight. This creates a lead, not over others, but over impulse, not over outcomes, but over reaction. The crowd moves quickly, but without orientation. The disciplined mind moves deliberately, with continuity. It does not rush because it is not late. It does not panic because it is not surprised. Fear diminishes in this state, not because danger disappears, but because interpretation stabilizes. Events arrive, but they do not invade. Challenges appear, but they do not overthrow. The Stoics never sought advantage through manipulation. They sought advantage through order. An ordered mind does not amplify threat. It contextualizes it. This is why silence produces authority. It removes the need to perform urgency. It replaces reflex with judgment. It turns pressure into information rather than command. The man who walks ahead of the crowd is not detached from life. He is deeply engaged, but not consumed. He participates without being possessed. His day obeys him not because he controls it, but because he has already controlled himself. The sequence has been reversed. Life no longer enters first and decides the terms. The self does. And when this order is established early, it carries forward quietly, through meetings, through conflict, through uncertainty. The advantage is invisible, but decisive. By the time the crowd realizes the day has begun, this man has already lived it once, in silence, and that silence continues to govern, even as the noise rises. Before the noise returns. Finally, what remains is not a technique, not a routine, not a system to optimize. What remains is a state of being. Before the noise returns, there is a moment the world does not claim, a thin margin of time where nothing is demanded and nothing is performed. In this space, the self stands alone, unobserved, unmeasured, intact. The Stoics called this the inner citadel, not a place of escape but of command, a position from which the world can be met without surrender. This is where sovereignty is forged, not through resistance to life, but through readiness for it. Not by silencing the world forever, but by meeting it from a place that has already been ordered. Modern life trains the opposite posture. Wake and react, scroll and absorb, respond before you reflect, move before you choose. This sequence fragments the self. It teaches the nervous system that urgency is normal and that stillness is absence. It erodes authorship slowly until life feels like something happening to you rather than something you are inhabiting. The Stoic hour reverses this erosion. Before the noise returns, the mind is allowed to settle into coherence. Breath slows, attention widens, thought becomes deliberate rather than compulsive. Neuroscientifically, this is the moment when regulation replaces reactivity. Emotion no longer spikes unchecked. The prefrontal cortex remains present. The nervous system recognizes stability. Philosophically, this is where dignity is restored, not as pride, but as inner alignment. You are no longer asking the world how to feel or who to be. You already know. This is why the Stoics insisted that freedom is internal. External conditions fluctuate endlessly. Power, comfort, recognition, certainty all dissolve under time. But inner order, once trained, endures. The man who rises before the world does not do so to feel superior. He does so to feel whole. He meets the day not as a negotiator of his worth, but as a steward of his actions. This is not productivity, not optimization, not self-improvement. It is sovereignty. Power begins inside, not as force, but as coherence. Discipline becomes peace, not because life grows easier, but because resistance dissolves. The mind stops arguing with reality. The body stops bracing against imagined threat. Stillness becomes command, and when the noise finally returns, it arrives to a mind that has already been shaped, a nervous system already trained, a self already present. The day has not yet begun. But the self already has silence, breath, presence, and then the world awakens.